Hello, hello. I'm glad to see that several of you have already joined us. Welcome to this first webinar from World to the Wise Academy. Really glad to have each of you. While we are giving just a couple more minutes for others to join, I would love for each of you to open the chat screen and type in your name and where you're from, and anything else you think might be of interest about you. So I hope you see where the chat screen is. If you hover your mouse over the bottom of the screen, you should see chat. I'd love to see who you are and where you are calling in from. Looks like we've got Jessica. Welcome, Jessica. Noah and Lucy from Nashville. I've heard of that. JM, I think that's James. Welcome, James.
Hey, thank you.
And Michael, good to have you. All right, so I take it everybody has found your chat button, and I'd like you to take advantage of that, not to just send text to each other all the time during the webinar, but most importantly, to send your questions in to me, because there's a really good chance that someone else is wanting to ask the same question that you have, but either doesn't have the nerve or doesn't quite know how to put the question. So we'd love I'd love to know the questions that you have, particularly about learning Spanish, and more generally, why not questions about learning foreign languages in general. And we'll get started with our presentation in just another 60 seconds or so. So I see a note from James and a note from Noah and Lucy. Anyone else want to shout out? Tonight we're going to be talking about learning languages. Hello, Jessica and Ezra. Welcome. It's good to have you. So I know several of you personally, and I'd just like to know, particularly from Lucy and Ezra, what grade level you are, if you wouldn't mind typing that in the chat screen. And anyone else that has school-age students, if you could type in what grades or ages, that would be helpful. Rising ninth from Ezra. Great. So Ezra is about to enter the high school years. Very cool. Okay, I'm going to share my screen with you now, and we're going to get started on our presentation. And here we are. So this webinar is entitled How to Tackle and Conquer Spanish. Now, the obvious disclaimer, I'm not going to make you fluent in Spanish by the end of this 40-minute webinar, nor am I going to even offer you the possibility of becoming completely fluent. Most of that falls on you, but what I am here to do is to provide tools for people to learn the language of their choice. And just a little bit about me. This is me for those of you that I don't know personally. I am married. I have one wife and 3 sons, and now 3 daughters-in-law. Our youngest son just got married about 3 weeks ago. And we all live in Nashville, although that's about to change. Son number 2 and his family are moving to the DC area. I have a lifelong love of foreign languages, but that is in a broader context of something that everything I do, and those of you who know me know that I have my thumb in several pies, is in one way or another connected to what I call cultural intelligence. And that is simply cultivating a greater global awareness. I imagine most of us on this webinar are Americans, and we, of all people, have a deep need, whether we realize it or not, I think you'll agree, to become more aware of this beautiful world that we are part of. And so my wife Becky and I do a number of things together. We lead cultural tours every year under the company called World to the Wise. And just last year, I opened another branch of World to the Wise called World to the Wise Academy. And that is primarily consisting of foreign language courses. I teach French and Spanish. My wife and I also teach locally here in Nashville at a college prep tutorial for homeschool students. I am in the process of taking more and more of the things I teach locally online to make them available to a broader audience in the form of online courses. But I would like to know what your goals are when it comes to learning foreign language, and specifically Spanish. So if you want to just type something in the chat screen, I will check it in just a minute. I'd really like to know from you, and this is, I'm sincere here, what you would like to learn, why you would like to learn Spanish. I know that some of you are involved in mission trips to Spanish-speaking countries. I know that others of you just have a simple desire to be able to communicate with speakers of Spanish, whether it's here in your own hometown or overseas. And speaking of learning foreign languages, we don't all necessarily learn in the same way. I know that you all have been exposed to different theories about learning styles. I am distilling that down to a very, very simplified version for our purposes. Some people are visually oriented, and that is that they want to see everything written out and or illustrated in order for it to stick in their brains. Other people depend more on their ear, and that is oral learning style, not oral, O-R-A-L, but oral as in related to ears, A-U-R-A-L. And then some of us are both. Some of us need everything we can get, and I'm speaking in the first person here, to really be able to absorb things. And so we like to see it written and illustrated and spoken. We like an audio component. So I'm one of those people that believe that everything is somehow connected, and I like, as a teacher, to be able to look at all of the building blocks of a language and not force my students to choose. And so these are just a very, very basic, this is a very basic list of the building blocks of any language, including your own mother tongue, English. There are common expressions, and then you start to learn nouns, in other words, objects. And I want you just for a moment to put yourself in the place of a child who is learning to speak. Many of you are parents or certainly older siblings, and you know what it's like for a child to begin to say his or her first words. The first words don't come out in complete sentences, nor should you expect your first words in Spanish to come out in perfect, complete sentences. We build little by little with building blocks. And so we have nouns, and so we get to a point where we can point at something and say what it is in Spanish. We have pronouns like I, you, he, she, etc., they, we. And then we have verbs. And if you've had any experience in learning foreign languages, you know that verbs can often be one of the biggest challenges. Now, this is particularly challenging for English speakers because we're very spoiled when it comes to verb conjugations. In English, we have very simple verb forms. We don't have time on this webinar to go into the detail of that. But let's just take the word run. I run, you run, he runs. I added an S on that one, and that's all. And then we run, you run, they run. It is so simple. And so if you're learning English as a second language, then that's one thing that you can say, that part is not so hard. But if you're an English speaker learning another foreign language, then you have to get used to this concept of what we call verb conjugation. It's a very, very important, and I would say unavoidable aspect of learning a foreign language. And then finally, we have something that I call connectors. These are the little words like conjunctions, like and or prepositions like in and with and for, etc., that literally connect the words in our sentences. Now, if a 2-year-old is not going to be, that's not going to be their strong suit, connectors, right? That comes a little bit later, but certainly as an integral part of learning to speak any foreign language. Now, why Spanish? Why are you interested in Spanish? For one thing, did you know that it's the second most widely spoken language in the world? And not just that, but there are 41 million native Spanish speakers just in the United States, expected to be to 42 million by the year 2020, just a very short time away. There are more native Spanish speakers in the United States than in the nation of Spain itself, where the language originated. And not only Spain, but Spanish is the official language of 20 other countries in the world. Now, some of you may have already had experience in learning other foreign languages. I just want to give you a little bit of encouragement tonight. If I am daring to put myself out there as a teacher of foreign languages, it's because I've been speaking multiple languages for well over 30 years. Spanish is not even my first language, or second. Technically, it's my third, with French being my second and English, of course, being my mother tongue. But I can tell you by experience that once you have become relatively proficient in one foreign language, then the second one will be so much easier. I mean, way easier. Think about having your first child and everything you learn and the steepness of that learning curve, and then the second child comes along and you know a few things, right? Not that they're all the same by any means, and not all languages are the same. But your brain, there are aspects of the temporal lobe, the frontal lobe, and the parietal lobe that all have to do with language, and most of this happens on the left side of your brain. If you're left-brained, then you should be encouraged about that. But you know what? I'm just as right-brained as I am left-brained, and I'm pretty proficient at several languages. So all that to say, anyone is capable of doing it. In one of my courses, I show a picture of the average American brain, and then next to it, the picture of the average Chinese brain. And I say, you know how these are different? They're not. In other words, you're just as capable as learning a foreign language as a Chinese person is. And by the way, Chinese are learning English by the millions as we speak. So you can do it. And it doesn't have to be related languages. My strong suit is Romance languages, which are the Latin-based languages, French, Spanish, Italian, and then I can get by in Portuguese in an emergency. But then you've also got Germanic languages. I speak Dutch because I lived in the Netherlands, and German. But my latest endeavor is Arabic, completely unrelated. And yet there are certain things that I've learned that my brain has been conditioned to do that make learning Arabic a little bit easier. So I'm one of those people that, like I was saying, believe that somehow everything is connected, and that most of the things that we are presented with in life as either or propositions are not that at all. They are false choices. And I believe very strongly in both and not either or. And so when you translate that to teaching a foreign language, I don't want my students to have to choose between a visual learning or oral learning or reading or writing. I like a global approach to learning a language. So for me, that means, yes, reading and writing, but also speaking and understanding. But it also means that multiple generations can do it. And this slide is to illustrate something that I am trying to encourage inside World to the Wise Academy. And that is parents and students embarking on a language learning adventure together. And I've seen it happen before. I know it's possible. I just don't think it's done nearly enough, nor do I think there are enough tools out there where a parent and child can participate in something together that they will both get an equal amount out of. And so for that reason, I have developed, as you may have seen in my emails or social media, one of the first courses, this is actually the second course inside World to the Wise Academy, Introduction to Spanish. Now, it's entirely online. I use a platform called Teachable, teachable.com, and Teachable will be hosting all of the courses offered by World to the Wise Academy. Now, this is Intro to Spanish, so if you're looking for something advanced, just hold on. We will be rolling something out like that. We'll be rolling out a more intermediate level. We will be rolling out courses that are full length that could count for high school credit, especially for homeschool students, but anyone will be welcome to those. So this is an intro, but and so it's not as long a course. It consists of 20 brief videos that you go through completely at your own pace, and it just covers the foundations that based on the feedback I've received, that most people would want to cover in an Intro to Spanish course. And so here is a screenshot from one of the first videos. You see it includes the live video component with me on screen, not live, but recorded on screen. And then with illustrations, with everything written out. And there is, of course, audio to go with the video. And so you are reading and hearing at the same time. And I ask you to repeat pretty much everything so you can hear the sound of your own voice and that you can work on the pronunciation as you go along. Now, you see on the left here what the curriculum looks like. And we will look at that in more detail now. This particular Intro to Spanish course includes things you would expect, like greetings. I also include the Spanish-speaking countries, so you can know where in the world Spanish is spoken. If you're in high school geography class, then you probably already know this, but you would be amazed how many native English speakers cannot even name the countries where Spanish is spoken. And then, of course, the numbers, alphabet, telling the time and the date, seasons and weather. Intro to gender. And I'm not talking about gender equality or male versus female. I'm talking, of course, about masculine and feminine. Now, this is something else that is a challenge for English speakers because we have no such thing as a gender of a noun. But in Spanish and just about every other foreign language you will ever study, you have to know the difference between a masculine noun and a feminine noun. And yes, it is kind of important because you could have the same noun that's pronounced the same way, but you could have a masculine form and a feminine form, and they could mean the same, and they could mean two entirely different things. So gender is, yeah, a bit of a big deal. Think of it this way. Just be glad it's not German, where there are 3 genders and not just 2. then singular and plural, of course. And then, as we talked about a minute ago, intro to verb conjugation. Now, we'll circle back to that a little bit later, but I cannot overemphasize the importance of verb conjugation, and yet in this course I parse it out in bite-sized chunks to make it a little bit of an easier slope to climb, and I do need to add that we just deal with present tense in this intro to Spanish. Now we get into the next course after that, and believe me, you will learn how to use the present tense more effectively, but then we'll also get into the past tense. And then the course after that, we will talk about many different other tenses, so you can express yourself in a lot of different tenses. Then we talk about the home and family. We talk about very practical things like the first conversations that you would want to have. And then, as I mentioned, connectors a minute ago, we talk about those. And then, yes, speaking of practicality, I introduce my students in this to the metric system. If you're an adult, then chances are you're quite aware of the metric system. But in school-age children, for school-age children, it's often not even taught. But the truth is, most of the Spanish-speaking countries where you might find yourself, some of you perhaps very soon, use the metric system, and it's really important for you to be aware of it. Now, so that's the Intro to Spanish course. I have also developed another option, we'll call it. We call it Enhanced Introduction to Spanish, and what enhances it is that it includes 5 different live coaching sessions with yours truly, your teacher. And so these are not just any old time. I will set certain 5-week terms where we will have weekly coaching sessions with you and me live and a small group of other people. So you can ask me your questions directly. We can talk about the joys and the challenges of learning Spanish, and hopefully you'll get as many of your questions answered as possible. And so I think that's, I can't remember exactly how much more money that is, but you'll see when you go to the website in just a minute. So that is if you want not only the personal training that you'll get via watching the short videos at your own pace, but then you'll also have a chance to have some live coaching sessions with me. Now, if you've been with me for a while, then you may be aware that the first ever course that we rolled out in World to the Wise Academy was a very fundamental course for anyone contemplating learning a foreign language. And it is called How to Learn a Foreign Language, 7 Hacks for Making the Daunting Doable. Now, I cannot stress enough the importance of this. In fact, I require this of all of my local students as a summer assignment to go through this basic online course. If you were to just sit down and go through it all at once, which I would not recommend, it would probably just take about an hour and a half or so. I recommend that you spread it out more. But it's all about learning how to learn. I did a brief video interview with one of my star students locally, and his name is Max. And when he first came into my class, he was a bit like the deer in the headlights, because I speak very little English in my classes. And the students kind of come out of there the first several times going, what am I doing here? But then their ear starts to get accustomed, and they start to recognize patterns and such. And this introductory course, How to Learn a Foreign Language, is all about recognizing some of those patterns. It's about conditioning your brain. A lot of it is about mindset. I cannot overstress the importance of mindset going into a foreign language, because let's be honest, most of us go into it with fear and trepidation. But if you don't believe that you can do it, then you're shooting yourself in the foot. So half the battle is getting your mind in order. So we're making this short and sweet. I just want to make an announcement that the first 50 people to purchase the Intro to Spanish online course will be offered a special bundle, and that is you'll get the Intro to Spanish for the price of $99, but you'll also be given a $20 discount off of the foundational course, How to Learn a Foreign Language. I really do encourage these together. Before you dive into Spanish, or even if you already have but you're struggling, go back and do the How to Learn a Foreign Language course to strengthen that foundation and to encourage you to keep moving forward. And so that's a special bundle price. But because you showed up on this webinar, if you are listening to me live, then I am offering you not just a $20 discount off of that first course, but for free as a part of the bundle if you use the coupon code that I'm going to share with you. And so I just want to be clear here. If you're listening to me on this webinar live, then I am offering you a special bundle where if you purchase the brand new Intro to Spanish course for $99, then you will be given for free the How to Learn a Foreign Language course, 7 hacks for making the daunting doable. So I'm going to pause this right now and see if anyone has sent in some chats. Yes, we have Jessica that says, Ezra would like to be conversant at least to be able to communicate with Spanish speakers here. Way to go, Ezra. Ezra and Jessica live in Nashville, where I live, and there are thousands of native Spanish speakers right here, almost literally in our backyard. And the same can be said of every single major city in the United States. And now even small towns have significant Spanish-speaking populations. They are everywhere, and they are so welcoming of gringos like you and me learning their language and speaking to them in their own language. I wish I had time to share some stories with you. My favorite thing is Mexican restaurants. I love to just surprise the server, address him or her in Spanish, ask them how they're doing, order in Spanish and all of that. And sometimes it just makes their day to know that somebody, a white person, has taken the trouble to learn their mother tongue. Lucy says, I would like to learn Spanish to understand a broader community. Way to go, Lucy. Annie says, I would like to continue to improve my Spanish speaking skills and understanding. So speaking and understanding. Annie, you're so right. This is not just academic. This is about life. And so these are life skills that we're talking about. This is not to just check off some list. If you're a high school student in Tennessee, then yes, you are required to have 2 years of the same foreign language in order to graduate. But we're not talking about checking off a list. We're talking about skills for life. So here's what I would like to invite you to do. Go to worldtothewiseacademy.teachable.com. Hope you've got something to write with. Just jot this URL down. Once again, that's worldtothewiseacademy.teachable.com. And then just select the Intro to Spanish course first, and then enroll in that. But then, if you're interested in getting in on that free bundle offer, which is the original course, How to Learn a Foreign Language, then just toggle on over to that and enroll in that. And when it asks for a coupon code, just enter the coupon code webinar in all caps, and you will be enrolled for free in that, which I once again encourage you to go through first before you dive into Intro to Spanish. Now, I happen to know that some of you on this webinar have been involved in or plan to be involved in short or perhaps even long-term mission trips, but certainly short-term mission trips. And so for that reason, I want you guys to be among the first to hear about another online mini course that I am developing as we speak and that I will be rolling out before the end of May. And I have to get it done because I'm getting on a plane for Europe June 4th. And so I am going to count on you to hold me to it, to roll out a mini course on Spanish for short-term missions. So yes, there will be some overlap between the Intro to Spanish and this course. I will not cover as much grammar in the short-term missions class. And obviously, as the name implies, I will equip you with vocabulary to carry on a basic but meaningful conversation about your faith, about the other person and where he or she is, asking them questions that will indicate that you care about them as humans, as fellow humans on this planet. And it is my hope that this will be a very valuable tool that I will be able to place in the hands of an untold number of Americans. You know very well that thousands and thousands of Americans make their way south of the border every single year to pour into countries such as Mexico and the Central American countries in particular, and then a smaller number in South America. And so I'm really hoping that this will be a tool that will bless a lot of people and obviously, in the long run, be a blessing directly to the people of Latin America and the Spanish-speaking world. So, if you are interested in getting on the list to be the first to know about the launch of the Spanish for Short-Term Missions, just go to daviddurham.org/missions, and you'll see where you can leave your name and email address for that, if you're not already on that list. If you are, then you know I will be in touch. So I want to thank you for coming to this, I will tell you now, the first ever webinar I've ever conducted. I hope I haven't gone so fast that you haven't gotten anything out of it. I want to urge you to act soon on the free webinar coupon, because that is going away once we launch the Intro to Spanish course officially, which is this coming Thursday, May 17th. But don't tell anybody, but it's already available. So you could get on there right away and sign yourself up in no time flat. So I'm going to switch back to the chat. And I want to take just the last few minutes we have to field any questions. We have about 5 minutes left. I'm wondering if anybody has any specific questions about anything that I have shared on this webinar. Just type your message in the chat screen, and we'll see if somebody else has the same question that you do. Thank you, Jessica. Up to so many wonderful things. Yes, you should see my hat collection. But this is a very exciting hat that I'm wearing, and I'm really looking forward to some good things. So yes, the course is technically live now, as we said, but the official launch date is May 17th. Any other questions? Can tell someone's typing. I thought someone was typing. Any more questions? Going. Oh, the code expires. Yes, the code expires on the special webinar coupon expires, I believe, at noon on the 17th, which is when the official launch is. Already obtained and viewed how to learn a foreign language. Yes, Michael. I hope you got a lot out of it. Think you're ready to graduate. Jessica, first course to take. Not sure. Yeah, your message got split, and I'm not sure what the beginning. Oh, if a student has already worked with conjugations / gender, etc., how long would you expect the first course to take? So are you referring to the Intro to Spanish course? Okay. I would say you could sail through that pretty fast. The reason I'm launching this in the month of May is so people can, whether students or adult learners, can go through it as a summer project. If a student is getting ready to take high school Spanish, for example, in the fall, I think the Intro to Spanish would be a perfect summer prep. And if Ezra is familiar with those concepts of conjugation, gender, number, and things like that, then he could get through it even faster. But I still would like to believe that he would pick up a good bit. Hope that answers your question. Michael says, I'm looking forward to the missions course as we're set to leave for Huitlahuaca the end of January. That is, I believe, in the southern Mexican state of Oaxaca. And Michael, I hope you have a great time, and I hope that that this Spanish for Short-Term Missions course will be just the thing that you're looking for. Jessica, we'll make this our last question. When do you expect to launch the next level? That's a great question, Jessica. I will know by July. And the reason I'm not quite so sure is I have already committed to teaching a full-length French course starting in the fall that would kind of follow the school calendar. And the question now is, will I be able to offer more than one full-length course at the same time? The plate runneth over, if you know what I mean. But I will, of course, keep you posted. And Annie, do you have any tips for reviewing and preparing for Spanish 2 in the fall? That's a great question, Annie. For one thing, I would go over your Spanish 1 materials. But I would also like to tell you guys about a tool that I have recently discovered, which I also mentioned in this Intro to Spanish course. The last video is some suggested resources from me, and that is called fluentu.com. Check it out, select Spanish, and they have all kinds of varied resources, from videos, short videos you can watch, to songs, and they make it a lot of fun. So I think that'd be a great way to keep up your Spanish, as well as, of course, Duolingo, which I'm sure you're aware of. Okay, we're out of time. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. I look forward to more adventures in learning languages with you ahead. We'll talk to you soon.